an Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Spoil Me, covering Awaken Chapter 18. Only 18. FYI. In this chapter, it turns out Linden, sweet Dr. Linden, whom I like, is of the same species as Dr. Spears, whom I do not like. Which just goes to show that every species has their ups and downs. But also, what the fuck, Linden? Welcome to Spoil Me. Welcome to the show, everyone. I am Natasha. Thank you very much to Heather for commissioning this episode. So I got in touch with Heather earlier today, and I wasn't sure exactly how to handle this. I think that last time I had said that I would just cover the last 3 chapters at once. But when I checked into it, it was like close to 80 pages, and I started to be like, oh, I don't know. I feel like that might wind up being too much. And Heather recommended there's a short story. Remind me, Heather, whose POV it's from, that apparently takes place within this book's storyline. So what Heather wants to do, Jill, her sister that winds up running off by the end of this chapter, is that right? What Heather wants to do is do this one chapter 18 by itself. Next episode, I'll cover the short story, which, Heather, if you can remind me, title of story and where to find it, and I'll tell people where they can go get it. And then come back 2 episodes from now, and we will then finish the book. And that will be the arc of it, and that way we get Jill's story in the context of the rest of the book. Heather says the name of it is Jill's Run in Reawakened, a Children of Divinity anthology. Okay, so it's a separate book that's a full anthology of multiple short stories, I'm assuming. Okay, cool. All right, so I will find that. So yeah, that's how we're going to do this, guys. Just, wanted to share that because I know that there were a couple people who had started reading this because I was covering it. So if you're reading along, that way you can sort of keep up. Let's see. She says most of them are backstory or future story, but this one takes place in situ with this book. Okay, cool. I always like that too. It's the kind of thing that as somebody who has not written a book, well, I have, but I don't like to count it because it sucked. I really think that writing side stories is a great exercise that I feel pays off a lot, and I often think that it would probably be really easy to write a side story and then begin to realize, you know what, I actually really like this character, and then just accidentally kind of write a whole novel, actually. But yeah, this is something that Jim Butcher does also with the Dresden Files, does a ton of side stories. And I think they're really rewarding, There's a lot of stuff in them that if you don't read them, I feel like is deeply important context that you just don't have. And that's not necessarily required, but I don't know. I like that. It adds texture. So back to this. Chapter 18. We start off with Constantine as he is listening to Arcady talk about Jordan. And I love this so much. Basically, Arcady, what I'm imagining here is Arcady in bed, and I know this isn't actually the situation, but what I'm imagining is him in traction, looking like a fucking disaster, but smiling and saying, oh, she was amazing. Like, genuinely, the fact that she put me in traction is such a turn on. Is like the vibe of this whole scene. Because Arcady is just like, all right, look, I know I gave you a lot of shit because she's a woman and I just didn't get it. But now, oh, I see it. I fucking see it, man. You aren't wrong. God damn. So this is just a really, like, I sort of enjoy both Trecek being like, all right, yeah, he gets it. And also we find out a little bit about the limits of the healing ability that they have. So let's see. Did you... Every time Trecek looked at her picture, he felt his blood stir. Despite his desire to have Jordan, the cost of acquiring her was growing rapidly, and his more practical side wondered if she was worth it. They had spent almost $100,000 subcontracting mercenaries, bribing police, acquiring equipment. Fortunately, Arcady had been the only member of the Vodnik on the mission, otherwise the cost would have been much higher. And I love that for her. I love this dude being like, all right, I was prepared to like pay a pretty penny, but this is ridiculous. Oh, I hope to be that kind of high cost. That's what I aim for. High maintenance. There are people out there who pride themselves on being low maintenance. Bitch, why? Don't be low maintenance. You deserve better than that. Be high fucking maintenance. Find somebody who is willing to put in the maintenance. Find somebody willing to bribe the police and subcontract mercenaries for you. You deserve it. Okay? So, this is when he turns and looks at his friend and sees that he has like all of this burned flesh. His regeneration was struggling to repair the damage caused when the SUV had been crashed and caught fire. Arcady's body had long ago expelled the bullets that he took during the encounter, but the damage caused by the fire was much more difficult to heal. The destruction of the cell's ability to reproduce meant that Arcady's body had to reconstruct those missing pieces from scratch that took a long while to accomplish. So this was a little bit hard for me to follow. So what I think he means here is that rather than like a gunshot wound where the cells are like surrounding it can sort of be called into action and repair a hole that's like a concentrated area of damage. When it's fire and it's spread out, all of the cells are like in the whole area are damaged. And so they can't all sort of snap to attention. They have to be healed from inside towards the outside rather than climbing in from the sides. I'm saying this in sort of a creepy way, I think, but I'm sort of like trying to picture it in the way that you would see it in like somebody making it with CGI in a movie, you know? Okay, yeah. So Heather says those cells are basically destroyed, so they have to be replaced. Okay, cool. His body also had to repair a damaged eye and ear, not to mention all of the organs that had been injured when the Escalade had smashed into the wreckage of the one in front of it. It was only through Arcady's stubbornness that he lived. Trecek reached out and gave his lieutenant's uninjured shoulder a firm squeeze. And he tells him, I really want her, but I don't want her so much that I want you to die, which honestly is just straight up affection in their universe. Like, he just said, I love you, basically. And Arcady says, this little injury is nothing. And I'm like, he's thinking to himself, like, you're only alive because you're that fucking pig-headed. And Arcady's like, whatever. Men. And he says, you gave me the gift of your power and saved my life in doing so. How can I refuse you this thing you want so much? Afghanistan was a shithole, wasn't it? Trecek said thoughtfully. So I don't know if we had heard about this being the place that they met, but we get this from them here. And then later on, Jordan and Chance chance are interviewing that dude, and he sort of confirms this whole thing. So he's thinking to himself, the Mujahideen fighters had overwhelmed the Spetsnaz team. Arkady had been mortally wounded, and Trecek had given his own blood to his friend in an attempt to save his life. It had done so, turning Arkady from a normal human into a metamorph. He had barely survived the process due to the seriousness of his wounds, but in the end, Arkady's will won out. Am I saying his name right? Is it like Arkady? I'm saying Arkady, but I'm realizing I haven't actually checked that. I start to rely a lot, I've realized, on audiobooks, even though those aren't necessarily correct either. Arkady. Accent on the R or Arkady? Arkady. 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 Okay. Arkady. And I really want to know exactly how he gave him his blood. Let's say, guys, that you're on the field with somebody. Let's say you're a soldier and you get really badly injured. And they're like, here's my blood. It'll save you. You have to assume they're a vampire, right? I definitely would think that they were a vampire. I don't know how much Trecek tells him before he gives him his blood. Because as we find out, the guy that they wind up interviewing later saw Trecek transform into the shark being. So it's not like Trecek really tried that hard to keep himself to himself. Arkady might have known by then what he was. I'm not positive about that, though. So I am sort of curious, how informed was his consent? Because it's sort of what would you rather? Personally, I think this is a much better deal than a vampire. Because you can walk around during the day still. You can just keep eating regular food. It's not like you have to start drinking. I feel like this is a way better deal. But if you expected to be a vampire and then this was what you got instead, I feel like that'd be quite a shock. And Trecek says, I should have handled this myself. How can she respect me if she never has to face me? And I'm like, oh, I don't like that. I don't like that. What does that mean? Basically, he's like, unless I personally am the one to beat the shit out of her, then she's never going to submit. Look. Ew. No, I don't like it. Outside the door, a small balding man in his 60s waiting. He was wearing an out-of-date gray suit and silver-framed eyeglasses. So Trecek comes out and is like, do you have the results? And this dude says, it was difficult to run the test from what little DNA we found. However, the car they abandoned had a few strands of her hair. It will work if we use a direct spinal infusion. Your blood and flesh are teeming with the microbes that pass on your abilities. However, as you well know, successful transmission is not always assured. If I take a sample of your spinal fluid and transfuse it into her spinal column, it will very effectively overwhelm her regenerative abilities. I have very little doubt her transformation will be quick, though probably very painful. Okay, so here's my thing, guys. When he says it will effectively overwhelm her regenerative abilities, what he means is that her healing might otherwise inhibit this transformation from being successful, right? Her body would treat this as a sort of an infection, maybe, right? And it would be like an immune reaction. Okay, so Heather is saying yes. So this will be super painful, but if it's in her spine, it'll work. Now, I'm just gonna say it. I kind of want them to do this to her. Hear me out, because then she can escape because she has all her other shit that she's like really good with. But she would also be a shark person, which I just feel like is an advantage. I don't know what the drawbacks would be. It feels like there's a connection between all of them. That's the main thing that I don't love. If they can keep track of her in any way, because she is somehow like mentally connected to all of them, I take it all back. I don't want it. But if there is a way for her to get the perks of this and somehow slide between those like strings that are attached, I feel like that's just all to the good. Some very short, intense pain, and then she winds up with all the advantages of these like lunatics. I'm really curious. I have to assume it doesn't work this way, or else they would have done it. But if somebody else is transformed, can their blood then be used to transform someone else? Or does Tretiak have to be the one, like as the source? Does he wind up being primary all the time? I'm just curious about, if they turn into what sounds like a copy of him, that makes it sound like he's being cloned. But if they wind up with all the exact same powers as him, one would think that power would also be there, that they could use. And probably they're just restrained by the fact that they know he's the boss, and if they went ahead and just transformed some other person willy-nilly, he would not be happy about it. So I'm assuming that they just don't do this because of reasons. But then I realized, I don't know, maybe it's not possible. I'm just curious about that. When will you be ready to take the sample? Tretiak asked. The doctor held the handle of his briefcase in both hands. Well, right now. My lab is ready. I can maintain the sample's viability indefinitely. I overheard your men mention the difficulty you're having in acquiring this particular subject, and I want to assure you it will be ready when you are. Cost? 1 million pounds in bonds. Half when I take the spinal fluid, the other when I infuse the subject. Deal, Tretiak replied, and pulled open a desk drawer. And he hands him a photo of his wife and daughter. No, daughter and granddaughter. Once it's done, I will return your daughter and granddaughter to you. Oh my God. Yelton's voice cracked, fear making his voice barely more than a whisper. Why? There's no need for this. Insurance. I've heard that some of your experiments don't turn out well. They're currently enjoying an all-expense-paid vacation. However, I understand that this beach has a problem with sharks. I don't know about you guys, but I desperately want to know what the fuck that looks like. Like when he says they're enjoying an all-expense-paid vacation, did one of his men call them up and be like, "Hey, this is Joe from 99.6 FM. You've won a trip." Or did they like kidnap them and put them on a plane? I want to know all about how this worked. What do they think is going on? So then we go to Lyndon. I wasn't ready for this at all. I still don't know what to do with this fucking alien storyline. I'm not mad about it, but I don't know where this is going. It's such a weird, basically the suggestion underneath all of this is that human beings are awakening because of their interference, right? That the aliens are the ones responsible for this stuff beginning to happen. As far as I'm understanding it, that it's not just like a naturally occurring symptom of evolution. This is like a crafted, specifically targeted result. I might be misunderstanding that though. So Lyndon, we have a really different POV from him than we had from Spears. It says, Dr. Thomas Lyndon always marveled at the way humanity adapted to their circumstances. Society had gotten busier and busier, so they had invented fast food and wireless phones. They were plagued with disease, so they made vaccines and treatments. They needed more food, so they invented hydroponics and cloned animals. All in all, humanity was an amazing thing. I respect very much the optimism of this point of view. However, it's bullshit. They invented fast food and wireless phones because they got busier and busier. No, that's capitalism. That's capitalism. Played with disease, so they made vaccines and treatments. Okay, sure, fine. We'll give you that. They need more food, so they invented hydroponics and cloned animals. No, we don't need more food. We have enough food. That's capitalism. We don't, the cloned animal, that's not for like efficiency. That's not because we're desperately in need of, no, we have plenty that we just throw away. So while I understand that this is meant to be an indicator of his personality type and his respect for humanity and his optimistic view of things, overall, I'm like, you're 7,000 years old. You should know better than this. This is all just a result of us being profit-driven monsters. Really, like at the base of it. So I'm just here to be not Dr. Linden. My point of view is much more Spearsian, I guess, which is a shame. But we are bastards most of the time. And the world didn't have to be like this. And here we are. So, just as Linden reached the main entrance, the door burst open and a rather upset-looking man in his 60s came rushing out. This is the doctor, right? Is this the doctor that Tretiak was just talking to? Okay. Heather says yes. Because for a second, I was like, I thought that this was going to wind up being really significant in the moment, that it was going to turn out that Linden, like, his briefcase gets knocked out and then a significant file falls to the ground or something like that. And then instead he picks up his case and walks away. And I was sort of, for a minute, I was like, what's going on here? And then I was like, oh, wait a second. This dude's like super flustered because of reasons. Which also is kind of interesting because I was just saying, you know, how I sort of hope that they're able to actually do this thing to Jordan. And this is adding another layer of like my being kind of hopeful that they pull this off, because then this old man's granddaughter and daughter will wind up being released. And I do want that for him, even though I don't love that this dude is involved with Tretiak to begin with. I don't really think most people working for Tretiak have a whole lot of choice in the matter, so I can't even hold it that much against him here. I don't know, though. I could be giving him a lot of benefit of the doubt that he doesn't deserve. So, Dr. Linden goes inside. He tries to just sort of, like, wave to the hostess of this cafe and step on by, but she, like, steps in front of him and asks if he has a reservation. Linden blessed the woman with a charming smile and followed her gaze down to the bright red Converse sneakers he wore. I know, dress code and all that. I don't think I've ever been anywhere that had a dress code that applied to your shoes. I'm not saying this doesn't exist. I am not fancy. I would love to be fancy. Don't get me wrong. I have aspirations of fanciness. But I have never been I don't actually, now that I stop and think about it, I know that places exist that have a dress code regarding like wearing a jacket, but I don't think I've actually been to one of those places either. But yeah, when he mentions that he's here to see Dr. Spears, everything completely gets pardoned. She's immediately like, oh, you're here with him. Never mind. And brings him to the back. And once he says he's here to see Dr. Spears, this was immediately when my fucking alarm bells went off. And I was like, oh, is this motherfucker one of these guys? And yes, he is, as it turns out. Spears flipped open the face cover and picked up the glass of whiskey in front of him. Our conversation won't be overheard, Lihonen. The smile instantly vanished from Linden's face. I don't go by that name anymore, Vondre. unlike you, I'd rather forget those days, that life, and enjoy a casual existence of study and observation. And Spears is just like, yeah, I would like to forget it too, but guess what? I don't think we're going to get to. We had a second cast and Talmud come and visit me. And immediately Lyndon is like, what are you talking about? You can thank me later for dealing with them. I also recovered their vessel and dealt with another second cast that was left to guard it. We don't have much time left. They had known each other for the better part of 7,000 years, and that was what made Lyndon the most uncomfortable. Spears was seldom concerned about anything other than his work, and the very fact they were meeting after a decade of avoidance highlighted his former friend's level of concern. Lyndon downed the water and set the glass in front of him. Did you get anything from them? What do you think? They displayed their usual contempt for lower castemen. Their arrogance allowed me to kill them. Is there a reclamation battalion coming? No. Their scout ship's communications log showed that they were dispatched to investigate a micro-singularity a few light years from here. Normally, I wouldn't be concerned. Their disappearance could easily be explained by a navigational error, an Incarna attack, even pirates. An Incarna attack. Later on, the Incarna are mentioned again, and I want to talk about that. So Lyndon says, and he says, they're from the 83rd War Host. And Lyndon gets so upset by this that people around them begin to turn and look and be like, what the fuck is going on over there? I would also like to know what the fuck is going on, because what's going on? He says even the mighty Lord Dominus won't look for the ship. I don't like the sound of that. Who's that? Lord Dominus. That sounds like a supervillain. That sounds like a guy that would be in, like, Inspector Gadget. What was the guy in Inspector Gadget? Was that Dr. Claw? I'm going to picture from now on Dr. Claw. The 83rd, you know as well as I do what horrors Dominus would inflict on this world. Humanity would cease to be. At best, they would be slaves. At worst, he would use an orbital strike to irradiate everything simply because it amused him. If you had worked with me to awaken these primates, we would have an army that even Dominus wouldn't be able to defeat. Instead, you've squandered your long years on observing them and studying behaviors. You've wasted your intellect. Wasted it. If, for some reason, Dominus chooses to come to this backwater insignificant world, the humans' deaths will be on your head. We have been here for 20,000 years, and I have asked you time and time and again to join me in my work. Every time you refuse, just like the others did. All of you, thinking you're human. All of you equally pathetic. And Lyndon says, if we subjugate humanity, how does that make us any better than the people that we fucking fled? Which, because I wasn't totally familiar of the situation, but I was getting that sort of vibe from Spears that, like, the caste system thing made an impression on him. He genuinely seemed to feel the inferiority that was, like, just, what's the word? Societally imposed, I guess. But this is the difference between how different people react. Lyndon takes the sort of view that I do, where I want everybody to be as equals. And Spears takes the view that many others do, where they're not so concerned with equality as simply not being at the bottom of the stack. They're fine with there being a stack. They're fine with people being at the bottom. As long as they're not the one at the bottom, they don't really care. And that's sort of what winds up happening. Like, this is what we talk about when we're talking about different levels of privilege, is that everybody has a type of privilege specific to them, even if they don't necessarily know that they do. Like, if you're a white woman, being a woman can be a problem. Being white, an advantage. If you are a white cis woman, being cis, marked advantage. if you are a black woman, you tend to be further down that stack. But if you're cis, that's an advantage over a black trans woman who is going to be markedly different in that stack. So there is a thing that begins to happen, that some people within their little sphere of privilege, they begin to sort of get high on their own status and begin to sort of like exert the same kind of oppression they've experienced on other people. And it's a wild thing to watch happen, because these people clearly like often don't necessarily recognize that's what they're doing, but it is a conscious thing that they're choosing to do, you know? And it's something that a lot of black women talk about, black men wanting to be on equal footing with white men, not wanting black women to be equal to them. They want to be able to subjugate their women the same way that white men have been able to subjugate women. And it being just wanting to take a white man's place rather than actually fighting for the equality of all people. And I think a lot of like TERFs can be like that. They are allegedly fighting for women's rights, but when it comes to trans women, all of a sudden they draw a line and they see themselves as like, oh, well, no, that's not, like, we're real women and this is for us. And it's like, what are you doing? You know? So Lyndon is sort of, he's in the position that I am, where I'm just like, why are you fucking trying to inflict this when you know it sucks? That's the whole reason that we fucking bailed, man. What are you doing? And Spears is just like, what am I doing? I'm trying to make it so that we are badasses who can't be defeated. I don't understand the question. And Lyndon's like, you're trying to turn them into slaves. And Spears genuinely is like, they're barely more than like monkeys, dude. Yeah, it's fine. He just doesn't see it, you know? Somewhere in the human psychology, they've learned to rein in these tendencies. It's a constant struggle for them, yet they're slowly evolving as a species. Evolving? They kill each other as readily as our own people have. When's the last time you've been in Africa or the Middle East, watched the news? They are violence channeled, fueled by greed, fueled by a lust for power. All they need is a strong hand to guide them as a species, to direct their capacity. Imagine what 7 billion awakened humans could do. We could free our lower caste brethren and put ourselves at the head of the, what is it, Genagir Empire? Genagir? I'm not sure. And this is when he says, the thing that I was mentioning with the Incarna, even without your help, I will break the genetic locks the Incarna placed on their forgotten children. What does that mean? Are all humans Incarna's forgotten children? Who are the Incarna? Or are they just like the awakened are Incarna's forgotten children? Break the genetic locks. You know, I was saying earlier that I thought the two of them were responsible for like awakened beings. But when he says breaking genetic locks, that makes it sound more like, well, I guess it still would sort of make him responsible. I wonder who the Incarna are, because they're clearly like an enemy somehow. But because when he says like an Incarna attack earlier, but where are the Incarna and why are their children forgotten? I will take this world and I will use the genetic spawn of our greatest enemy to free our brethren and destroy their very own creators. Who's the fool here, Vondre? Is it you or I? I see the folly of subjugating another sentient people to free our oppressed caste. Assuming you succeed in all your grand plans, when do you expect your awakened human army to rebel against you? Will it be your own technical servants that foment it? For all of your scheming and actions, you've shown me nothing different than a first caste would. You plan to have servants and sycophants and harems of exotic females, just as any first caste. You create weapons of destruction and plan to use them without restraint. Any hand of friendship is slapped aside so you can better hold on to your own power. All you seek to do is place yourself in their company and rule in their place. And, yep, that's the thing. Let's see. Oh, Heather says it's pronounced Jenagir. Okay. Remember what Lyndon told Jordan toward the start of the book. Most of humanity has the capacity, but they haven't been able to figure out why some awaken and some don't. Okay. I'm wondering about the Incarna and if they the genetic locks. The way that Spears said that made it sound like it was like a purposeful lock. Like they kept it, they put something there to keep them from evolving in this way. And I'm wondering if that's actually true or it's just the way that he phrased it because he has like limited understanding. So at this point, Lyndon just says, all right, good day. And he gets up and Spears very nearly like throws a punch and just starts some shit here. As he watched Lyndon maneuver his way out of the cafe, Spears swore he would make certain his former friend lived to see the moment of his victory. He would provide a front row seat so that the insufferable man would see former fourth caste technician Vondre become the ruler of humanity and the savior of the Jenagir lower castes. Then, once that was complete, once he had everything he had always dreamed of, he would strangle the life from Linhanon with his bare hands. Lihonan. Lihonan? I'm going to say Lihonan. I like that. Well, Spears, look, you're pitiful. That's a fact. So get over yourself. I just don't. Just genuinely, when your whole thing is like, I can't wait to rule the world and make you, and prove to you all and make you see. That's just like small dick energy, man. You get a life. Seriously. Figure it out. What are you doing? That isn't a way to live. Oh, you'll see. You'll all see. Shut up. You're boring. You're basic. Get a life. All right. So now we go to Jordan. And Jordan right here is so sure she is about to get reamed out for the way that she handled this shit. And instead, it does not go that way. So she's talking to Shaw, and she's looking at him, trying to read his energy. And she thinks to herself, he was harder to read than her father was, which is sort of a fun, personality thing to drop in there. It's just that Jordan is very good because of all of her abilities at reading people. But the fact that her dad was able to hide from her how he was feeling or thinking, I mean, unfortunately, men are so encouraged to shut down that can be a skill a lot of men have. So Director McIntyre hadn't even spoken to her, and that made Jordan nervous. She expected to be punished in some manner, perhaps even expelled from the agency for violating one of its principal tenets, but she wanted to at least defend herself. So Shaw starts off with, "How do you think you did?" And she's like, ugh. Oh, sure. Start it with that fucking kind of question. She's immediately just like... So she just says, I did what the fuck I needed to do. And he's like, and by what you needed to do, you mean save your fiance. And she's like, yeah. And he says, I'm not looking to find a scapegoat. This is an honest mission review. You were the team leader. You made the calls. We need to walk through them so that we both learn. And she's still like, this is a fucking trap. This is a trap. Something. He's going to get me on something. I got to be real careful how I word my shit here. So he says, you chose to break our number one rule, public power use in an uncontrolled environment. I've read the reports, but I want to hear your thoughts. Why did you opt to exit the vehicle and go after the pursuit team? And she's just like, man, we were screwed, basically. We were being pursued. We were being, like, herded into a certain area that we weren't familiar with. The vehicle was damaged. The driver was shot. Everything was going to hell. We didn't have a choice here. And he says, Douglas agrees with you. That's not surprising. You and he seem to have bonded. And she's like, what are you saying? That he's like, because he likes me, he's lying? And he's like, no, he wouldn't cover for you if you fucked up. But, and he says, Breyer says you made the right call too. That's pretty good considering how well you two get on. And then he says, we tend to put our head down and charge even when we should step to the side and avoid something altogether. If he's backing your call, then he didn't see any way out of it either. And then he goes, why are you the one who exited the vehicle? Douglas is nearly impervious and he's way stronger than you. And she's like, granted, but can he fly through the air with the greatest of ease? I am dainty like a ballerina, and he is like a fucking wrecking ball. And we needed somebody who was very dexterous and precise for a job like this. And God love him, neither of those words describe Douglas. And he is like, fair, okay, true. And then, what mistakes did you make? And she finally has to sit back and be like, all right. I should not have interrupted what turned out to simply be a very intense negotiating meeting by dropping through a skylight without any sort of visual confirmation of what was going on inside the room. That wasn't the best call I've ever made. And he says, do you have anything else to add? Because that's definitely the mistake I was thinking of. And she says no, and he says, don't beat yourself up. We had to play this hand. If I had a choice, you would have sat this one out. As it was, we needed our heaviest hitters on this operation, and that's you and Douglas. Ooh, excuse me. I don't know what that was. Getting old is weird. Your body just starts doing whatever. Honestly, this showed one glaring fault in our team makeup. We don't have enough power-based damage output or resilience. We can handle the 1s and 2s, but a team of hyperphysicals puts us at a massive disadvantage. These metamorphs are game changers for us. We're going to have to adapt. There was no doubt in Jordan's mind that Shaw was correct. The encounters with the Vodnik hadn't been victories. So far, SOS-7 had come up nil and had only saved its own skin in every conflict. The thought made Jordan worry for her family that were currently in protective custody with the team's non-powered operatives. And she says, so like, short term, what are we going to do? And he says, we've got some tricks. You need to go meet Chance. So then we jump to her and Chance together, and they are pretending to be a couple. They're in London, walking down the street in their club clothes. And I really do enjoy how they're having to play this part, but she feels kind of weird even just pretending to be a couple with this guy, especially considering now that her boyfriend knows what she's doing, and it simultaneously like makes it better and worse. So as they're walking to meet this contact, she asks if he can be trusted. And Chance is like, no, he definitely can't. But his information is usually good. And we don't have a whole lot to go on here, so we're going to just have to take our chances. And they get buzzed in. I love when they like press the bell and the first thing that he just yells is, got the money? It's not like, who are you? Or, you know, and there's no like, he knows exactly who is at the door. I can't tell if that's because there's a camera, because he looked out the window, or if there's only one person who knows where he is and would come see him. I kind of feel like it's that one. But yeah, he immediately is aware. So they start up the stairs, and there's a lot of discussion, or sort of like mental note-taking, really, of how busted this place is. Everything has this sort of neglected, unclean feel to it. And Jordan is tapping into her abilities and becoming hyper aware of her surroundings, trying to sense if there are any traps. There's even like a mention, both with her and Chance, about the fact that they are specifically avoiding touching the metal railing. Lots of nasty surprises could be connected to or inserted in a conductive metal object, the least of which could incapacitate an unsuspecting person. And that is a very unpleasant idea. I don't like that at all. That's never occurred to me. I don't think I've even like seen that done in a movie. I'm sure it's probably been done in a movie, but I haven't seen it that I can recall. That feels like really underhanded. Just like poor sportsmanship, you know? So they come through the door, and there is this like 5'5" dude, very muscular, with a really heavy Russian accent that she thinks is maybe feigned, and with just like this sort of air of, I don't leave this apartment. I get DoorDash Chinese for 3 meals a day and smoke cigarettes 24 hours a day. His name is Dimitri, and they are here to ask him what he knows about Trechek. And as it turns out, he knows a fair amount. He sees the picture because she has given a description that has like been made into a composite drawing, I think is what it is. And he's like all flirty with Jordan, leering at her and whatnot, and really kind of treating this all in a casual sort of way. But when he sees that drawing, immediately he like shuts down and begins to sort of panic. He acts as if he doesn't even want to touch the drawing. And he says, this is going to cost you guys double. And later on, Chance winds up paying him triple. And I can't help but think this guy earned his money, because I really don't expect him to stay alive. But we'll see. And he's like, this man's your enemy? And Jordan's like, yep. And he says, a bad man to have as an enemy. An evil man. He's a monster, a murderer, inhuman. This is what he looked like when you saw him. And Jordan's like, this, yes, but we know what he is. So what we need to know is who he is. And that kind of cuts to the quick of the thing, because you can tell this dude wasn't eager to try and explain to somebody who doesn't know, oh, he can, by the way, turn into like a shark man. If she knows already that he can do that, that helps, you know? So he goes to this section of his kitchen, and there's a piece of loose tile that he has a box of photos hidden in. And he pulls them out, and there is a photo of him in with a group of other soldiers. Let's see. They looked like they had been in the field for some time, though many had smiles on their dirt-streaked faces. Jordan immediately recognized the bald man who scowled in the direction of the camera as if he were trying to kill the photographer with a look. Next to him was a larger man who had short, dark hair and rugged features. His face, though attractive, held little emotion, and his dark eyes were as unforgiving as any Jordan had ever seen. That's Arkady Malyev. He was the second in my Spetsnaz unit. Back then, we thought we were unstoppable. We were killers, ghosts in the night. Arkady was one of our most ruthless and one of the most skilled. We all feared him, but we knew he would see us through the war. Still, nobody liked him. He killed women, children, whoever he felt like. He even killed an infantry lieutenant once because the man refused to provide support for one of our teams. That is Colonel Konstantin Tretiak. He was our commander. If anyone is holding your dog's leash now, it's him. He was the only one who Arkady respected enough to listen to. Tretiak was one of the best Spetsnaz officers I had ever seen back then. He was loyal to his men, an excellent tactician. He is also a thing, a creature. I don't know what he is exactly, but he isn't human. I saw him change once, in the middle of a battle. He looked like some sort of demon, half shark and half man. They shot him again and again, but nothing stopped him. He tore into them with his teeth, his claws. There was nothing left of them but bloody rags. Then he came for me. It was as if he didn't recognize me. I tried to run, but he grabbed my shoulder and lifted me off the ground like I was a pebble. And he says that he was certain he was about to get just chomped down on. And it's like somehow Tretiak registered finally, no, this guy's on my side, and managed to come back to himself just in time and dropped him. The next time I saw Tretiak was back at the base days later. He just looked at me and nodded like nothing had happened. He may have been human then, but his eyes were the same. I never said shit to anyone about what happened. So at this point, he polishes off like his third drink that he's poured. And Chance asks, where is he now? And Dmitri is like, there was some sort of weird special ops project that Tretiak and like 50 other very high level operatives were selected for. And they purged all these records. All the guys who got selected, it was like they never had existed. And we were basically told it would be really good if we just forgot about them, and unhealthy if we tried to remember. And he says that even the photo they're looking at, this is not something he is supposed to have. He had happened to send all of this stuff home before, all of this program got confirmed, because other people's stuff, they went through it and took all the images and journals and photos and stuff, and they just like got rid of them. So this is a very rare bit of information that he's holding on to. I don't know what they did with those men. There were rumors, but nothing that was ever substantiated. Some said they were part of a program to create super soldiers like some fucking comic book. But they were just rumors. Who would believe that? After a while, I just pushed that shit out of my mind. In the old days, it wasn't healthy to have a good memory. And then he says, a few years ago, he surfaced in the underworld going by the name Crimson Shark. He did wet work for a former KGB, then some Americans. Apparently, he's running a merc unit called Vodnik. My friend said the men were all like Tretiak now. I just never want to see any of them again. As far as where they are, who knows? Check with Rene Artiste to see if he can make that connection. I don't know who Artiste, like if we had heard of him, but evidently he's not going to be a factor because he's in a prison in China. So Chance is just like, yeah, we're probably never going to see him again. And Jordan takes that photo and takes a scan of it. And this is part of why I'm like worried that Dmitri is going to wind up in trouble because she has a photo that I feel like they're going to figure out. I don't know. And I feel kind of bad because Dmitri, he seems like a scumbag, but like he's doing his best sort of thing, and even Chance is like, man, you probably just want to bail. Like it's dangerous for you to still be hanging around here. And Dimitri's like, man, and go where? These guys are pros. If they want to find me, it's already too late. There's nowhere I'm going to go. They're not going to fucking track me down. I may as well hang out here and just get shot than hide in some fucking shack somewhere or wind up thrown into a Chinese prison like this other dude. Kill me. Go ahead. I'm just going to chill here and get my DoorDash and try and enjoy myself. Just make sure you don't fucking talk about me to them. That's the main thing. And Jordan's like, oh, trust me, we will not. So as they leave, let's see, Jordan gets the text. The message instantly popped up with an emergency alert verification code appended to it. Jill's off the reservation, not sure where she's gone yet. Tristan. What's going on, Jordan? My sister, Jillian, has done something foolish, Jordan said wearily. Again. Wonderful. Care to elaborate? She's left the estate and managed to elude the security teams. I've got to find her before this Crimson Shark does. And that is the end of the chapter. So, next episode, reminder, we are going to be reading the short story about Jill's adventure in a Children of Divinity anthology, Jill's Run in Reawakened. So if you're reading along. Oh, and Heather just shared a link to the book. Thank you, Heather. I am clicking on it for later. Oh, and it's on Kindle Unlimited. Dope. But yeah, so that is what we're going to be doing next time. And if you want to read along, make sure you check that one out, because I don't want you to be wondering what the fuck I'm talking about. If you just read the rest of the original book, you're just going to be like, wait, what is she saying? Next episode is Tuesday, September 21st. So it'll be the next series of Spoil Me's that I do Tuesdays and Fridays. And then Friday, September 24th. So I'll be finishing the book Friday of next week. Okay, cool. That's coming right up. And if you don't have Kindle Unlimited, it's a steal at only $1.99, says Heather. So yeah, I'm pretty interested in seeing what Jill's up to, because I enjoyed her when we met her for that little bit. She was fun. So Jill, what are you doing? What are you doing? Bitch, what are you doing? I would love it if Jill is just like, look, I was very specific about the type of latte I wanted, and they came back with an oat milk, blonde latte. I doubt it. So I just had to take matters into my own hands. It's fine. I have the points to get a free one. It's not a big deal. Anyway. All right, I'm going to wrap up. Thank you again very much to Heather for commissioning this. Thank you to all of you guys who are listening and reading along and supporting Heather's husband's project. That's fun. I appreciate it. And I will be seeing you all again on Tuesday. I always feel weird saying see you next Tuesday and actually meaning it, because it just feels like you know what I'm saying? But I will see you next Tuesday. Until then, toodaloo, motherfuckers.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.